Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jimmy Dustin Music Channel with our bi-weekly show, uh, week with, whatever we're calling it these days. But chance for me and some friends to talk about Happy Halloween, everybody. We have our Halloween episode tonight. Albums that have scared us over the years, and Dr. Kelly, our friend Shannon, couldn't be with us tonight, but he left me his, so we will read his off, but we've each picked out three albums that have scared us over the years, and we'll go from there. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, comment, let us know records that have scared you over the years. Uh, hear from you. So thanks for tuning in. I'll start with my number three. This was this person's first solo album, working with his band for several years and producing some really good records under his band. But my number three, Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. Title track, Welcome to My Nightmares, haunted song. Demon, Cold Ethel, why is Ethel cold? Because she's dead. It's a good record to listen to at Halloween time. Alice Cooper's always good to listen to at Halloween time.
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong with that.
Probably, but we'll go with "Welcome to My Nightmare," Alice Cooper, which is actually my favorite record of his too. So,
classic record. Is that Dick Wagner on guitar on that?
I don't know if he plays on all the tracks or not. I know he plays on "Welcome to My Nightmare." He wrote that.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, he may play on the whole album. I'm not sure. Let me see what I can find out here. You want to let us know your third there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dick Wagner did play guitar on it.
Yeah, great guitar
Tony
player.
Levin played bass on it.
Tony, yeah. Couple guys are going to play with Peter Gabriel later.
Yeah.
Interesting. Both of them. My number three, it's going to be a record that has always scared me. It still scares me. It's still a scary listen. And that is the debut album from the Cocteau Twins. And it is called Garlands from 1982. Before they became a dream pop, ethereal, proto kind of a shoegaze band, they made this very harrowing record with lots of echo. Liz Fraser really hasn't developed their vocal chops yet. They're not an ethereal band yet. And they made this record that really sounds like you're walking through a condemned haunted house. The songs are good, not great, but it kind of plays like a soundtrack in some strange reason. For some strange reason, I really think this is a scary listen. Some of the title songs on here, I think Wax and Wayne, and was probably the single from the record if there was one. But this was a pretty big sensation in the UK as an independent record. Very scary listen. Sounds nothing like the dream pop they're going to be known for starting in a couple years, like 1984 after this. My number three scary record is going to be the Cocteau Twins' Garlands with a very young Liz Fraser on vocals.
Liz who?
Liz Fraser.
Fraser.
She actually.
I thought you said Liz Fair for a second.
Oh no, Liz Fraser. Equally influenced by Kate Bush and Susie Sue. Those were two big influences. And she later dated Jeff Buckley, actually.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, they collaborated on a song. I think that was one of his dad's songs. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, she was pretty close to Jeff.
Yeah.
This was in the 90s, of course, but.
I forgot to mention Shannon's number three choice.
Okay.
Number three, he had Manson, Antichrist Superstar.
Okay.
His number two was a band I'm not familiar with. Maybe you are. Wednesday 13.
I am not.
Transylvania 90210.
I am not.
It's scary to me, so I might have to check that album out. Never heard that one before. So, my number two album I've talked about on this channel before, and when this album came out, I bought it because the cover of the album looked kind of scary to me, and I listened to it. I hadn't really, I listened to some metal over the years, and I think this album was 1987. I think this came up on our 87 show. But when I first heard it, there was, some screaming vocals that I wasn't used to hearing. And it's not really a scary album subject matter wise. A lot of, there's a song about a witch and Hall of the Mountain King by Savage.
Okay.
And, I wasn't one of the guys that read a lot of fiction books about like the Tolkien stuff and a lot of that stuff, Lord of the Rings. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but this album kind of scared me when it first came out. Now I've grown to love this album. Like I have all three of these on my list are, easily in my top 100 albums of all time. But, just some great playing, great vocals on this album. This is a really good album. It turned out 24 Hours Ago, Beyond the Doors of the Dark, Legion, Strange Wings, Prelude to Madness, Hall of the Mountain King, The Price You Pay, White Witch, Last Dawn, Devastation. Scary titles, if nothing else. So,
White Witch, it sounds like C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. I don't remember if that song has that subject matter in it or not. I'll have to check that out.
It's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, I have read some C.S. Lewis over the years, and I read a lot of the Tolkien stuff when I was younger, like 7, 8 years old. But once I got into high school, I kind of got away from that and was reading more history stuff and became more of a nonfiction guy. All right, what's back to you for your number 2?
My number 2, this is, of the three, this is probably the most disturbing listen. And it's still a disturbing listen, and that counts. Sonic Youth, Bad Moon Rising, from 1985. You can see the cover there. Even the cover is very disturbing. You've got the scarecrow with a pumpkin head, and its head is on fire. I don't know if the background is New Jersey or New York City. Hoboken, New Jersey, that's where Sonic Youth, that was their home ground. The New York City art rock phenoms, No Wave. And this is their last really experimental record before they made the holy indie trilogy of Evil, Sister, and of course Daydream Nation and Magnum Opus. They made this very experimental record. There's literally no melody on this record. I do love this record. It was the last record with Steve Shelley. It was the last record with Bob Burt on drums before Steve Shelley became the permanent drummer on Evil on the next record. But there's a lot of segues on this record. In true art rock fashion, almost feels psychedelic. It's very dissonant. It's very hypnotic. It has a lot of industrial sounding noises. It is truly a scary listen, especially side 1 with intro into Brave Men Run. And Brave Men Run into Society as a whole has a very disturbing segue in between Brave Men Run and Society as a whole. On side 2, you've got Ghost Bitch. Truly disturbing song. It sounds kind of like John Carpenter decided to go avant-garde and use guitars instead of keyboards. It's a very hypnotic listen. It is not a masterpiece. It's a very good record. Their first masterpiece is Evil, coming up in the following year. But this is a very, very disturbing and unsettling album. I do like it a lot, though. My number 2, Sonic Youth, Bad Moon Rising from 1985.
All right. My number 1 is an album. It's in my top 10 favorite albums ever. Scary because, in my opinion, if we were ranking movies right now, this movie would probably be number 1 as like the scariest movie I've ever seen. It's not a soundtrack. I purposely didn't want to include soundtracks in this, but the whole album is one song. Part 1 and part 2 when it was on vinyl. One side was part 1, the other side was part 2. It's Tubular Bells.
Oh, okay.
which is by Mike Oldfield, which is the song from The Exorcist movie. And Mike, I'm a huge Mike Oldfield fan. Mike plays like all the instruments on this, produced it, does about everything you can. And I mean, call it prog, call it, fusion, call it atmospheric rock, whatever you want. But it is all of those. But just a fantastic listen, and just hauntingly scary, just from the standpoint that it's the song from The Exorcist, which, in my opinion, is such a scary book. Or a scary movie. I didn't have any honorable mentions other than one, which is actually Shannon's number one. So his number one is Ghost, Opus Eponymous. And he goes on to say that really any Ghost or W13, Wednesday 13 could be on the list. He had a couple other honorable mentions that I'll go over: Type O Negative, Bloody Kisses, and Fastway, Trick or Treat.
Fastway, interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that album. I'll have to check that out.
I'm familiar with I'm familiar with Say What You Will, but that's not scary.
Yeah.
It's a good song though. But
is that on the Trick or Treat album?
I don't know. Fastway is, I want to say, the guitar player from Motorhead doing more of a straightforward hard rock thing, kind of Zeppelin-y actually, right? But I like Say What You Will, great song.
Yep.
But I guess I need to check out some Fastway because I never considered them to be a scary band. I don't find Ghost to be scary, I've got to be honest. But a lot of people love Ghost.
I've grown to enjoy Ghost over the last year or so.
It sound like Bluish Cult.
Never listened to them until like probably the past really 8 months. So
I have tried.
Yeah. Just can't get into them, huh?
No, I can't. They sound like Bluish Cult a lot.
Really?
I don't find them to be heavy. The stuff that I've heard is far from heavy. It's like melodic hard rock. And I appreciate the Papa guy, who does all the different theatrical thing. It's actually a great gimmick.
Yeah.
I think it's a really smart marketing kind of a gimmick, but I get it. It's kind of like, similar to what Kiss did years before them. But I don't find the music to be particularly scary, but maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I tried.
Another one I just happened to pop into my head that I would add to my honorable mentions is Rammstein. I can't think of the name of the album, but it's the one with Du Hast on it.
I think Ghost is really good musically, actually, but I just don't find him to be scary. I don't know what to say, but.
Well, share with us your number one and your honorable mentions there.
All right. Well, my number one should come as no surprise to you. You have heard this record before. At the end of the day, there was nothing else that I could put number one because for years I did think it was the scariest record I ever heard. At the point that I first heard it, it was the only band that, it was the only album. It was the only album that I knew by this band in their entirety. Maybe 10, 12 years ago, I always thought it was a very scary masterpiece. Now, I understand that it's not even my favorite record from this band. It is one of 4 records by this band that is among my 20 favorite records of all time. But after having going back and listened to it, it's still a very scary record. And that, of course, is Siouxsie and the Banshees' Juju.
Drink. Everybody watching.
It's I think a lot of you folks now know Spellbound. I've known about Spellbound for years, but the real showstoppers on me that just dropped me in my tracks, the Hypnotic Epics, and I'm talking about Voodoo Dolly and Night Shift, which, they're just absolutely epic songs, 6 and 7 minutes long respectively. Siouxsie's pretty much in a hypnotic state on these tracks. The most hypnotic performances on 2 epic songs that I've heard since Jim Morrison, On the End. Okay, John McGeoch's guitar work is just absolutely otherworldly on these tracks. John McGeoch, fabulous guitar player. His intro to Spellbound is absolutely legendary. It's like the beginning of a Hitchcock thriller. often been compared to Alfred Hitchcock. His opening guitar lines in Spellbound, but Spellbound is a catchy song, but it's quite scary.
I remember that from listening to it. Yeah.
It's very hypnotic, but it's a scary song. But the really scary tracks on here, like I said, again, Voodoo Dolly and Night Shift, the two epics. The narration by Susie on Night Shift it's a chilling narrative. Voodoo Dolly, the feel of the song is cosmic, it's hypnotic. What you're getting here, folks, is a mix of the scary, the supernatural, but also the sensual, all thrown into one. This is also the record where Susie really comes into her own as a vocalist. This is the record. The first three, I love her vocals, but she hits a different level on this record and never looks back. Everything about this record is hypnotic, but it's also a scary listen. And the reason this is my number one, it is one of my 20 favorite records of all time, and it's my favorite record of 1981. The first two are as scary, but they're not a collection of great songs. This record is a collection of great songs. They almost inadvertently made a concept record without even trying, kind of looking at some of the darker elements of life. And I'm paraphrasing what Steve Severin himself said, the great bass player. I don't think they planned to make a concept record, and it can't really be construed as a concept record, but it sure feels like one. Scary, sensual, supernatural, exotic, mighty slab of art rock, haunted art house cinema at its finest. Number one, Susie and the Banshees, Juju.
All right, let's hear your honorable mentions.
I'm going to start back in 1970 with the first Black Sabbath record. I think if we were to listen to this in 1970, we'd probably appreciate and think it was even scarier than we think it is now. But the opening chords on the title track are still very scary. That's a scary record. They did heavier stuff and sludgier stuff later, but I still think that first one is the scariest sounding record. Yeah. For whatever reason. The first Black Sabbath record, 1970, self-titled. 1972, I believe, Tangerine Dream Zeit. Very scary listen. This is a record that I used to have on CD years ago. It disturbed me quite a bit. You get the feeling of being caught in a black hole, the vacuum of a black hole in this particular record. It's a very piece of dark ambient music. I don't think they ever made anything quite this dark again. They went more to Zeit, Z-I-T. Okay. Yeah, it's a very scary listen. You get the feeling that you're kind of caught in a black hole in this record. I can't explain it any other way. It scared me so much I got rid of it, and that's scary, right? But it's not a collection of great songs. It works more as a mood piece. They would become more of a new age band later. Also in the 70s, I'm going to go to the Suspiria soundtrack in 1977 by the cinematic Italian progressive rock band Goblin. This is a very famous soundtrack. Goblin specialized in cinematic pieces. They were a progressive rock band. This is a scary listen, but it is much scarier to me in conjunction with watching the movie itself. Listening to it, when I went back and listened to it, it's not as scary about seeing the imagery for the movie simultaneously. So, but it's still a scary listen. Moving into the 80s, 3 albums from 1982. Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, very underrated movie. Very creepy soundtrack by John Carpenter. This doesn't get the love of the first Halloween soundtrack, but this is more of a dark synth pop kind of a soundtrack. It's very dark. It's like dark synth pop. It works well with the science fiction themes in the movie. You know, witchcraft meets technology. It all works with the movie. I'm also going to go with an honorable mention I do have, the Cat People.
Bowie.
Bowie is on here. That's Natasha Kinski on the cover. I got to say, as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, I had a crush on both Natasha Kinski and Annette O'Toole. Both. They're both in the movie. I think Annette O'Toole was absolutely beautiful. And Natasha Kinski on the cover here got all the love. But having them in the same movie, you know, I wasn't a Charlie's Angels kind of a guy. I was a Natasha Kinski, Annette O'Toole kind of a guy. But it's a really great movie, too, by the way. Kind of an exotic, erotic horror movie.
I remember seeing that movie. That's a good movie.
Yeah, exotic, erotic horror movie. Very supernatural, but the soundtrack is pretty creepy. Bowie has he's better on the instrumental track. And by the way, this is Giorgio Moroder does the soundtrack to this. He previously did the soundtrack to American Gigolo, but this is kind of like Halloween 2. It's a piece of dark synth pop, really, with a lot of ambient textures thrown in that are kind of creepy. Also from 1982, I don't have this, The Thing soundtrack, the remake of The Thing. And I always butcher his name, but it was not done by John Carpenter, who directed it. I believe it's Ennio Morricone. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. I always butcher his name. Very famous. He did the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly years before. But
King of the Spaghetti Westerns.
yeah, but he did the soundtrack for The Thing in 1982. Carpenter enlisted his services. That's a very creepy and haunting soundtrack. I guarantee you. And this is one that is much scarier to me just listening to it without the movie than, say, the Goblin soundtrack on Suspiria. Those are three from the 80s that kind of stand out for me. Moving into the 90s, I'm going to throw out Soundgarden, going back to rock music. Super Unknown, their most popular record, but boy, does it have some scary pieces on this record.
Yeah, you're right.
Black Hole Sun is a dark, dark song, even though it was, it's pretty much a neo-psych song, really. But it's very dark feel to the song. Fell on Black Days, very dark song. But the three songs on this record that are just super dark are Limo Wreck, Mailman, and especially the darkest song to ever come out of the Seattle scene, and that is 4th of July. 4th of July is a harrowing track, and probably the heaviest track between Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden that I've ever heard. It is a very heavy song. I don't know what Cordell and Thale are playing in terms of, I don't know if that's drop D, drop whatever. It is low and heavy. Very harrowing track. Moving into 2000s, my last honorable mention is going to be the soundtrack for Mulholland Drive. David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, not a horror movie. It's a scary soundtrack, though. It's also hauntingly beautiful, but it's also very scary. The segment with Silencio, when Naomi Watts and Laura Herring are sitting in the theater in Club Silencio, very unsettling piece of music. A lot of the soundtrack, it's not disturbing like the Sonic Youth record, but a lot of it is very dark.
Who did the music on that soundtrack? Do you know?
That was Angelo Badalamenti, who did the soundtrack.
David Lynch.
He did Twin Peaks. I think he did a lot of stuff on Blue Velvet as well. Yep. But Mulholland Drive is their masterpiece. Mulholland Drive, by the way, just from a movie perspective, we're talking about music, but the movie is probably one of my 10 favorite movies of all time. Naomi Watts, I think that's the greatest acting performance of all time in that particular movie. But the actual soundtrack is pretty scary. It's also very beautiful. And those are my honorable mentions.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, folks. We'll be back in 2 weeks on November 13th for the Jimmy Duster birthday episode, by the way. It'll be my double nickel birthday on that day. So that'll be our last show of the year. Going into the following one would come on Thanksgiving Sunday, and starting then I tour with a Christmas band every year, and my Sundays are going to be tied up until after the first of the year. So we'll make that our Thanksgiving episode. And a band that I know you're thankful for and I'm thankful for, because we both have them amongst our favorite bands ever, is Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
So we're going to run down our 5 favorite albums.
They're either my second or third favorite band ever. I think everyone knows my favorite band, but they're either my second or third. It's kind of a draw between Pink Floyd and Radiohead for my, it's too close to call.
Yeah.
But Pink Floyd is an art rock giant. I mean, they're,
right like behind, of course, Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen.
I think Pink Floyd, of all the classic rock bands, is by far the deepest. And this includes bands that I love, like The Doors and Rush. And, the Pink Floyd is the deepest, most profound band. And, we're going to do a Pink Floyd episode because we both love Pink Floyd. They're both among our 5 favorite bands of all time. So that was why we chose.
Make sure if you've
episode.
liked our content this year, make sure you go back and comment on some of the videos. Let us know what you'd like to see. Comment on this video. Let us know what you'd like to see coming up in 2023. We'd like to, keep this going and do, another 20 episodes or so next year. And we're open to, discussion for some topics. I know I've got some. We want to talk about debut albums eventually and in there. And I'd like to get you listening to some Zappa in there. So we'll do some more where we turn each other on to some different things as far as, stuff we haven't heard before. And we'll get Shannon involved in that too. And that'll be a lot of fun. So thanks for joining us. Again, like and subscribe to the channel. We're glad you decided to join us, and we'll see you again on November 13th.
And I want to wish a happy Halloween to all you voodoo dollies out there. You know who you are. Happy Halloween, voodoo dollies.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.